Hey guys, welcome back to JD Mods. Today we're doing an update video on the K20 Honda Insight. It's been a while since this car has been on the channel. Pretty much haven't talked about it since we built it. And we built this car around 2 years ago. It's done, I think, around 20,000 kilometers on the swap. And we have a few people asking about this car and wanting to build one themselves. So today I'm going to go over the car for our new subscribers, show the setup, and then I'm going to talk about any issues we've had with it and anything that I would do differently, and then we'll take it for a quick test drive. So first I'll show you guys the build for people who haven't seen it before. It's a little dirty right now because this is my winter car, but basically it's a 2000 Honda Insight. This is the ZE1 chassis code. They're made of aluminum and plastic if you don't know. Even the frame and everything's aluminum so they don't rust, which is why I like it for a winter car, because the salt doesn't affect it too badly. I got this one for a good deal because it had a small front end collision, so I replaced the hood, bumper, and straightened it out as best I could, and then bought a EP3 with the K20 Z1 and 6-speed transmission, which is what we put in here. So let me show you around the car. The suspension, we use the stock Insight struts with the adapters to bolt them to the EP3 hubs and brakes. So it has EP3 hubs, brakes, and ball joints, and then Insight struts and lower control arms, which are still holding up okay for the shell having around 400,000 kilometers, around 430 actually. Inside is completely stock. I have a triple gauge pod set up for air fuel ratio, oil pressure, and soon to be water pressure, and then I have an OBD2 gauge for all the essentials. I guess I'll mention the one thing that is kind of not perfect with the swap right now, because these used to have 3 cylinders. The K20 Z1's a 4-cylinder obviously, so the tach and the different transmission means the speedo are off. Also the water temperature doesn't work, so pretty much everything here doesn't work. So I got one of these OBD2 gauges that just plugs into your OBD2 port and tells me my speed, water temperature, battery voltage, whatever else I need from it. Aside from that, the interior is nice and stock. The rear, I have stock springs with upgraded struts, which are essential for any K-Sight build, because when you take out the battery and add a heavier motor, it offsets the weight quite a lot in this car. The back end becomes way too light and it's too high in the air. So the aftermarket struts really help with bounce. I can't remember the name of the...
I think they were gas.
Oh yeah, they're gas adjustable shocks. Definitely if you're building one of these cars, you need to buy those shocks. And then the rear is also a bit of a sleeper. The only notable difference is the slightly larger turn down exhaust. Unfortunately, this exhaust tip was a chrome one from our Canadian Tire. It's a 2.5-inch turn down exhaust, and unfortunately the chrome coating has been eaten off and now it's just rusty, so I have to sand that down and paint it. Then eventually I'm just going to replace it with a nice stainless steel one or something like that. Alright, let's go take a look at the engine bay. Alright, so here is the swap. So like I said, this is a K20 Z1, which we got it out of an EP3, but it originally came out of a 05 to 06 Acura RSX. Just a little quick details on the swap. We're running the stock intake manifold. I wanted to run the RBC intake manifold, but that requires you to delete the stock center panel, which gets rid of your hood latch, your upper rad support. So usually you have to custom fabricate something as well as do hood pins, which I didn't want to do. So I went with the slightly lower horsepower rated intake, but it fits underneath the stock rad support. Also on the motor we have, I believe, 440cc RDX style injectors with a aftermarket aluminum fuel rail. I'm running a nice return system, which is the way the Insight is from factory. So all I did was change out the fittings on the tank, and as you can see down there, I ran 6AN stainless steel fuel lines all the way from the tank to a filter underneath the car to the rail, and then I have a little fuel pressure regulator for the return. We're running innovative mounts. They are 75 or 85 actually. So they're pretty hard mounts, which we'll get to the downfalls of that later. Over here, we have just a custom kind of cold air intake that I did. I think it's actually a Civic engine intake that I've kind of hacked up to make fit. It goes way under near the wheel well. Also in the front, we have a aftermarket aluminum Civic rad. This is for, I believe, a 92 to 95 or 95 to 99 Honda Civic. It's on Amazon. It's like 50 bucks. It works really, really well. I had to notch the upper rad support to get the cap to fit. I made a custom mount using the stock Insight bracket, and I'm running a single electric fan on the back, and that keeps my temperatures as cold as I need them, pretty much thermostat temperature all year long. And for the exhaust, I have a K-tuned 421 header. It's a swap header, so as you can see, it goes down really quickly and then out, which clears my stock sway bar and shifter cables and everything. Then I have a custom 2.5-inch exhaust that I welded up. So also when I did this build, I wanted to make sure everything was super clean, so I redid all the brake lines. Since the chassis is aluminum, it's never going to rust. I wanted the brake lines to never rust as well. So all the way from the master cylinder to all 4 wheels, I did 4AN braided stainless brake lines. And when you do this, you have to get a proportioning valve or a prop valve from a 90s Civic as well, just like that. It makes the biasing good for rear drum brakes. So anyway, that's about everything about the swap. I guess the electrical, we're running a CJ's wiring harness adapter and a K-Pro ECU. So that's about everything with the swap. So I will start it up now, and then we'll take it for a drive and talk about how it's been running the past year.
I think so.
So that was the first time it started in about 3 days in the cold winter. As you can see, it starts pretty well. We get temperatures that are as cold as minus 25 in the winter, which is when I drive this, and it starts every time. Of course, I've moved the battery to the trunk, and it still has no problem starting the starter. Let's close up the hood and listen to the exhaust. So as you can hear, it's not too loud. This is obviously a cold start with high RPMs, but when we take it for a drive, you'll also hear how loud it is. So while the car is warming up here, I thought I would show you guys underneath the rear hatch area. So of course there used to be a big battery under here. It's now empty. I put the carpeting and steel back, even though you don't have to, just because it makes it look super clean. But if you lift up the rear storage area, as you can see, I've utilized this space very well. I have a battery right here in a marine battery box. The lid doesn't really stay on, but I've secured it all with foam, so it stays in there really well. I have a toolbox, some spare fluids, some coolant under there, and a little jack. So I really like the Insight for the amount of storage it has, because that's all hidden under there. And then I can also use this huge hatch, considering the size of the car, for day-to-day use. Alright, so my car's still a little cold, but it's a great time for me to tell you the first kind of thing I would do differently. Right now it has 85 mounts, 85 hardness mounts. I got them on a good deal used on Kijiji. If I were to do it again, I would get the 75 mounts. People say the 60s are too soft and they will tear themselves apart, but as you'll hear in a second when I take off, on cold and rainy days, the mounts are insanely vibrationy. They
Vibrational?
Vibrational. They vibrate the whole car. So let's take off slowly here, and I'm sure you'll hear what I'm talking about. You can hear the whole dashboard starting to vibrate. That was around 3,000 bad warmed up driving down the highway. Like we're doing 85 right now, and it's not bad. In 6th gear it's even a little better. But definitely one of my biggest complaints about the car is the amount of rattles. The dashboard rattles, the speakers rattle, something up here rattles, my rear view mirror rattles. It gets a little annoying, but obviously I just listen to music and it kind of goes away. Alright, so now I think it's time to brag about the K-Sight and how well it's performed. So like I said, the build has around 20,000 kilometers. I don't know exactly because the odometer reads faster than it should right now. But overall, it started every single time since I built it. I don't think the batteries ever went flat.
The gas gauge is off.
Oh yes, the gas gauge. Yeah, like I mentioned, pretty much all the gauges are off, including the gas gauge for some reason. But aside from the gauges being off, the motor has held up exceptionally well. I've just done oil changes and a few gaskets before swapping it in, and it doesn't leak any fluids. The idle is rock solid. Air fuel ratio is great. I'm using the feedback from the O2 sensor like factory. Oil pressure is solid, 75 plus PSI all the time. Everything just works exactly the way it should. The mount and axle combination, I haven't had any issues of breaking any axles. The axle angle is a little hard with the Insight mounts, but I haven't had any issues. I have no complaints about the build. It's really nice to just be able to get in the car, drive it around. If I drive it quite nicely in the warmer weather without letting it without having to let it warm up, I get a fuel efficiency of around 6 liters per 100 kilometers or lower, depending on how I drive. I never drive too nicely because it's really fun to drive fast. I've timed a 0 to 60 in this car of I think around 5 seconds on the winter tires, which is pretty impressive without a launch or anything. So it's quick, it's good on gas, it'll never rust.
It's a 60.
Oh, it's a 60. So it's just a great car. If you guys see one of these chassis come up for sale, I would highly recommend buying it and saving up money for the swap. I think they'll only go up in price because everything else will start rotting away, but this'll last forever. So let's do a pull as we get on the highway. Alright, so I'm gonna end the video by doing an on-ramp clip to give you guys an idea of the speed of the K-Sight. Hopefully someday we'll take it to a track, but for now, there's none close to us. Alright, let's hope it's not too busy.
Oh, we got a slow driver.
Alright, so we found a slow driver, now we'll pass him. As you can see, no problems passing on the highway. Alright, so thanks to the slow driver on the highway, we're just gonna film a small rip on a back road over here once I get past these houses. We'll roll into third. Alright, so that is the update video on the K-Sight. Hopefully you guys got an idea that it is working really well. I love this car. It's a lot different than, say, the Aristo or the MR2, as it is a front-wheel drive car. But for a front-wheel drive car, I really like the speed, the efficiency, and how reliable it is. So it's a great winter car, and if you are thinking of building one, I would highly recommend it. I had a turbo EP3 that made 350 wheel horsepower. This thing probably makes around 220 wheel horsepower. I never got it tuned, but it's honestly just as fun to drive. It's obviously not as quick as my Aristo, but I'd say it's equally as quick to a stock MR2 turbo like mine, and obviously is way better on gas. So let me know if you guys want to see anything else done with the K-Sight or any other cars, but hopefully you guys enjoyed today's video. As always, please like, comment, and subscribe.